fun and interesting. When Dad retired, I bought the family business portion of his practice. And Mom, when we were working on the estate plan, both Dad and I, having been estate planners and wealth advisors in the arena, came up with some great, ideas and plans. And based on the pre-show prep call that we did a week ago, Mom said, "Oh, so I get to maybe change some of this stuff? I think you guys kind of ganged up on me as we were doing this." So I'm feeling a little nervous, but excited. So, welcome to the three of you. Mom and Dad, Marty, Maureen, I know you agreed to do this hesitantly, and I appreciate your trust in both myself and Courtney. In a moment, once I do turn this over to Courtney, I'm going to be more not the host, and we're going to allow Courtney to facilitate everything. This is an experiment that I believe could have legs. I really believe that allowing live, that's why we called this Family Business Unscripted, because we're going to be talking about the Palumbos family business, not the business itself, but the business of our family. And I believe that a lot of family businesses out there and families of affluence may not take that step necessary to bring in somebody like Courtney to facilitate. They're really good at bringing in the attorney, the accountant, even their financial advisor, but sometimes these, the family business coaches or the family wealth coaches, they don't know what they do, and that's what I really wanted to bring together. So this is live. We don't know what's going to happen, and Maureen Palumbos gets the final say whether this recording ever makes it out to the podcast. So, with that, Mom and Dad, why don't you take a few minutes and talk about, yourselves, your journey with family businesses, and then, but more importantly, your journey with, give some background to what we're going to be talking about with PFV and, and the Palumbos family. And then I'll have Courtney jump in and introduce himself.
Go ahead. Have a word or two. No words. Okay. As Michael said, I was in the business of working with families on their own estate planning for 41 years before he bought out a portion of my practice, and specifically the portion that worked with family businesses. And while I dealt with 300 various clients over the years, when we honed it down to the family business portion of my business, it was about 8 families, probably close to 75 different people, but from 8 different families, where I worked starting with the founders of the business to their kids, to their kids' kids. And as Michael's saying, now he is on to working with the 4th generation of some of those people. I knew who those kids were when they were born, but they were little kids. Now they're adults, and Michael was working with 4th generation. So I understand that it's tough to get people thinking about this, especially when you're running a business and you're right in the middle of payroll and taxes and job bids and everything that you have to do to run a company. But it's important to settle back and have a conversation without the stress of business operations or family operations for that matter. Just talk about what's important to you. I think we've done a lot of that. I was telling Michael and Courtney earlier, I went through our estate documents, which frankly we just updated in August of 2018. So it's not like I had to blow too much dust off of them to read them. And they are well thought out, good products that accomplish the kinds of things we want to do to preserve the resources we put together. And if there's any disagreement between the two of us, it's why don't we just give them the money? Which has been, kind of a bone of contention back and forth. And we use trusts for the purpose of protecting resources for our children and ultimately grandchildren. Just having been through many a life situation where divorces occur and legal problems develop, a person's personally held assets can be wasted away through either no fault of their own or all their fault, but wasted away nonetheless. And the use of trusts in an estate plan brings a level of protection, a potential protection to the estate. So from a legal perspective, that's the kind of documentation that's in place right now. Set aside the legal, one of the things that has marked the last 20 years for us, actually 21 years for us, is something we call PFV, which is Palumbos Family Vacation. And we just concluded PFV 21. And this started as all the kids left the house 21 years ago. We hadn't seen them and they hadn't seen each other for a while. So we got together actually just for a great grandma's birthday party over a long weekend. And it was the first time any of them had seen each other in quite a while. We have kids in California, kids in New York City, kids in Maine. So, you know, the only time they get together is we figured we'd see them at holiday time. But obviously they all have families of their own as well on the other side of the couple. So we didn't all have them home at holiday time. So this one weekend was the time when everybody was here and we had such a great time. We said, let's do it again next year. And we did. Only instead of a weekend, we made it a long weekend. They came on Thursday, didn't go home till Tuesday. And that day, event ended and said, hey, let's do a whole week next year. And so now, for 21 years, we have taken a full week and bring them all together. And a lot of this is driven by the fact that, you know, in the financial services industry, we were the beneficiaries of a lot of very entertaining, exciting travel as incentives for what it was that for production. You know, you deliver this, you go to Hawaii. You deliver this, you go to South Africa. You deliver this, you go to Switzerland. I mean, Maureen and I have been all over the world on company trips as a result of the business that we did with Lincoln. I wanted to create that same experience for our kids, none of whom, except Michael, are in the same industry, none of whom have exposure to that kind of opportunity for travel. So we oftentimes will rent a great big house, and it's getting more and more difficult to find a house big enough. 5 years ago,
we're not traveling the world with the kids.
Yeah, no, we find there's plenty of places in the United States that are well worth going to. We've been to the Outer Banks. We've been to Long Island and on the Montauk. We've been to Toronto.
They don't need all that.
Okay, so we've been to lots of places, and the kids value it. We concluded 2 weeks ago, and Michael took us through an interesting discussion among the group about what'd you think about this? How do you view PFV? Is it important to you? Do you want to see it to continue? And there were differences of opinion. Some people said, I'm not so sure. And others said, it's very important to us, and it's especially important to the younger generation. It's great for the kids to see each other, cousins who wouldn't see each other otherwise. So, back to just a legal perspective, we created a life insurance trust a few years ago and put a big life insurance policy in there. It's a single to die. It's first to die, so it's on me. At my passing, that trust will receive a block of capital. And at the time we created it, frankly, it was in the days where there was an estate tax. It was critical. If you had a big insurance policy, you didn't want it owned by the insured, or it would be included in the taxable estate. Well, I'd like to tell you we've got $22 million, but we don't. So the estate tax avoidance implications of the trust don't exist anymore. But the idea of a pool of money coming together and allowing it to fund PFV on into the future is an idea that we kicked around. And frankly, that I think is where some of the the discussion came from at the meeting is, well, why don't we just take the money and then we'll pay for it? Which, okay, that's an option, unless you don't want to go, in which case you just got the money and go away. So, we place a priority on getting everybody together. We're not so old that we're going to be gone anytime soon. So the ones who maybe had challenges about whether they think it's a good idea now, 10 years from now, they may feel radically different. And the ones who value it so much, who are now 8 and 10 years old, will maybe to the point, same place their parents are now, saying, I don't care. So it will evolve over time.
And Michael said I was maybe not so happy with the estate plan because I am a believer in looking at what has already been created, which at the time was very good, but every few years you should look at it and update it and possibly change it. I don't like the fact that it's set in stone. And so here we are.
Thank you both.
Too much information, Courtney, but go ahead. Now you're on.
Feel free to cut us off. We're talkers.
Michael, any last comments before we transition?
It was interesting. I would just share with everybody that, my family was open to carving out some time for a family meeting. And we had it facilitated for about an hour and a half of it with a person who took the whole family through the disc profiles. So we had a really interesting conversation about what that meant. And probably at least 50% of the family was hesitant and saying, what are we doing this for? I don't get it. And 100% of the family left saying, this was really good and I'm glad we did it. So, and that seems to be, the flavor that I see in working with just about any family is this first time of doing something different is like, what are we doing this for? And it's scary. And then it was really neat to watch my siblings and hear them as they came up afterwards and said, really appreciate you thinking and caring enough about the family to push us to do something that was uncomfortable. So.
And it was very, very, very good.